For our next and fourth session, I would be inviting discussion on the pertinent topic of promoting workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion and employee well-being. Unfortunately, Mr. Rajiv Luthra, partner LLN Partners, is not present with us here today due to some personal exigency. In his place, the role of moderator will be carried out by Mr. Nakul Sachdeva, partner, dispute resolution, LLN partner. Mr. Nakul Sachdeva, sir, I would like to invite you on the stage. And I would also like to invite the speakers for this session. Mr. Sameet Gambhir, Vice President, Corporate Law, DCM Sriram. Ms. Deepika Chaudhary, GS Xerox. Mr. Roop Lumba, General Counsel at Rolls-Royce. And Ms. Suparna Singh, NDTV.
Hello. Am I audible? I think so. This has become the norm because in video conferencing, the first thing that we say every time is, hello, are we audible? For all those who were hoping to see Mr. Luthra here, just to clarify, he's not well and he's lost his voice. And I spoke to him earlier today, and he sincerely apologizes for not being here. And though these are extremely large shoes to fill, and I'm absolutely not body shaming him in any manner, please don't take it that way. I'll try my best to moderate this session to the best of my capability. By way of an introduction, we first have Deepika here today. So Deepika is the Executive Director Legal at Xerox. She is a seasoned leader executing strategic roles, and she has recently been facilitated with the Female General Counsel of the Year award by Legal Era. Next up, we have Roop here, who is the General Counsel of Rolls-Royce, which is listed amongst the top 100 general counsels in India by Legal 500, as well as the Business World Legal India. We have Sameet sir with us today, who is Vice President, Corporate Law, DCM Sriram. He is a senior legal professional and company secretary with 3 decades of industry experience, and is also recognized as the top in-house counsel by Forbes India. And lastly, we have Suparna, who is President NDTV with 25 years of working relationship with NDTV. Suparna has the highest level experience in all aspects of its functioning. Now that we are done with the introductions, I would also like to say that Deepika and Suparna are also journalists, one by training, one by education. So I guess this is going to be an interesting evening with both of them here. Coming to the most important aspect, that is the topic. The topic at hand today is promoting workspace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and employee well-being. So the 4 words in focus, which we'll be deliberating and discussing upon, are diversity, equity, inclusion, and employee well-being. Having said that, I would first want to move on to Deepika and just want her views first up as to why are we deliberating on the question of diversity.
Okay, so can you hear me all right? All right. So I think first of all, I'm really glad that we're talking about diversity and nothing to do with law, because it's always, not that this is less risky, but I think talking about law in front of so many lawyers is always riskier. So I'll try to answer your question, why. So I think it's from the social imperative as it used to be some time back or many, many decades back. I think organizations are now realizing that it's important to have a diverse talent pool in their organizations and how it impacts their profitability. I mean, I read very recently a McKinsey's report, a recent report, where they're saying that if you have diverse companies who are at the top of the list on the diversity agenda, they are 25% more likely to be more profitable. So I think profit, when companies see profit, they also want to obviously, drive those agendas, and diversity is definitely at the top of the chart for them. And the other thing is also, across the world, if you see, most of the countries are now making it a mandatory requirement to have women on the board, and India also is one of those countries. And UK, for example, has 30% of women at the executive level or at the board level. And from, again, I'll quote the McKinsey report, which says that, the boards which have 30% of more women representation on the boards or executive teams are, of course, they outperform the ones which don't have, or which have lesser representation. So I think these are, of course, very, very important reasons. And another reason which I think, from my perspective, that I see as a consumer or as a woman, is that, we see that, in our houses or in our families, we see women are the ones who are making most of the spending decisions, right? There was a time that men used to decide which car to buy. Now even that is not the case, and now women are driving more SUVs than men. In fact, I went for a test drive this weekend, and besides me, there were two other women who were there to sort of take a test drive of a SUV. So, decisions are being made by women. So obviously, women are the ones who are the consumers, and then they become a very, very important stakeholder. When it comes to deciding, what should companies do, and how should they sell better, and what should they do with their products. I mean, if they want a pink car, then pink car it is, right? So they are the ones who should be making those choices, because they understand the consumer psyche. They also understand consumer preferences and choices. So I think that is one very important reason that organizations should and already do look at diversity as a very important matrix. um, and fourth, I mean, I have a list, I can talk about it, till the cows come home, but I'll talk about another one, which is that if you have women at the executive level, you are more likely to attract good talent and good diverse talent if you have women at the executive level. That always happens. I've seen it in my own career, that, I have seen younger lawyers or younger, professionals wanting to join an organization because they met a woman leader who they were inspired by. So these are some of the reasons that I would like to talk about, but of course there are n number of more, and I'm sure my panelists will talk about those as well.
Deepika, now that we have you here, and we've started off with you, and the first question we asked you is why diversity, and you've given us your view on that. I would just like to follow that up with another question, first to you only, that now that what you said is what you feel about diversity, in which manner have you and your organization taken up the aspect of diversity in the organization? How does it manifest in your organization?
So I think first I'll talk about what is it that organizations should do to promote and sort of move the needle on diversity. First is, I think, increase the representation. And for example, Xerox has been doing it for last 40, 50 years. Our first CEO, Joe Wilson, was inspired. The Wilson rule is inspired by him, and he made sure that we, of course, it's become a core value in the company. So I think representation is important, whether it is at the senior levels, executive levels, board levels, or across the organization, to make sure you have diverse talent pool. And to do that, of course, there are policies. And for example, in Xerox, we always make sure that our hiring managers are given the mandate to create a diverse, pool of candidates when they're presenting it to the hiring manager. And then, of course, hiring manager chooses whoever he or she likes to choose, basis the merit, etc. But at least the slate is pretty diverse when it's presented. So I think representation is first, and second is the accountability. I mean, if it is a tone from the top, it always has larger impact. So when you make your senior executive or your leaders accountable for diversity matrix, it of course will move, needle will move. And you in fact have to put your core managers or core executives at the heart of your diversity and inclusion initiatives and policies. That's number two. And also, I think opportunities, you have to create opportunities for diverse candidates to make sure that you have more and more diverse candidates and diverse professionals through the gate. And And once having done that, now you've got the people, that's like you created diversity, but you have to also create an environment of inclusion. And how do you do that? Do you have to make sure that your environment is safe and secure? And when I talk about safety and security, it's not that a lamp should not fall on somebody. Of course, that should be for all. But create policies and processes where unconscious biases we normally talk about when it comes to women employees and diverse candidates, those should be basically, companies should have processes, policies, and methods to tackle those kind of things, so that people feel secure and safe. And also, of course, and the other point I'd like to talk about is the culture, which is a very important part of feeling inclusive. And that actually makes people stay with the organization, because people come, they come as a whole. They don't come as a part. I mean, if you're a woman, you come as a whole with your thoughts and how you look, how you feel, how you behave. It's a whole package, right? So I think that is something that is important again. And for example, in Xerox, what we do is we have something called ERG groups, which are basically, the short form is ERG, Employee Resource Groups. We've had one for the last 40 years, TW, which is the Women's Alliance. It's a non-profit voluntary group of women. We are present in, let's say, 23 countries, and the executive team sponsors and supports this group, and this group basically works on DNI agenda, and the main purpose is to promote professional and personal development of diverse pool of professionals in the organization. So quite a lot of things we do, and so that's where I'd like to sort of close my comments.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Deepika. With that, I guess we will move on to Suparna. Suparna, coming from a media house and being a journalist in her earlier days, I'm very sure will give us a perspective of her own, which we should all value. To start off, Suparna, what does diversity mean to you? I mean, what is diversity? When I say the term diversity, what comes to your mind first, and how would you want to elaborate on that aspect?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's very intimidating to be in a room full of lawyers, be, I presume, the sole journalist, but also reassuring to think that this is the first time that I'm going to interact with so many lawyers and not get a fat bill at the end of the day. So thank you in advance for that. I think for me, diversity and inclusion are intrinsically linked to the role of a woman. And I do genuinely believe that once we have women in leadership roles, and by that I mean in leadership roles at every rung of an organization, that inclusivity and diversity automatically follow. I've seen it from my own experience, and I know this is true for other organizations as well, that women are instinctually more inclusive. So for me, first of all, that is a huge priority. This is 50% of our population that we're talking about. If we can guarantee equality to them, there's going to be a huge benefit for other groups that need to see those kind of chances. I think Deepika referred to, once somebody's in the gate, what can you do to guarantee them a place at the table, right? And I think that's very important. So we recruit, obviously, candidates of all backgrounds, but we also make sure that every day all groups have equal access to management, that they all know that every opportunity that is available to one group is available to another. The media in this context is a little bit of an anomaly. It's always been much more inclusive, I find, than traditional industry, for example. And certainly I've benefited from that. NDTV was founded by actually a woman. Many people know Dr. Prannoy Roy as the face of NDTV, but actually it is Radhika Roy, who happens to be his wife, who set up the company. And as the founder, it was very much her mission that kind of drove inclusivity from the beginning. So the rest of us all benefited from that. And very much before its time, NDTV had women as camera people. So they were lugging very heavy equipment. You have to recall that in the late 80s and early 90s, and I'm referring to the days of the World This Week, equipment was much heavier than it is now. We now shoot on phones. At that time, we had these huge batteries and kits. And women asked if they could shoot and were told, absolutely you can. And we had women who were editors, technical editors, assembling our footage, which again at that time was a space largely restricted to men. All these chances came down from Radhika as the founder. And then that generation instilled those values of inclusivity and gender equality in those of us who are leading the company now. And so I find it's very organic, as Deepika said, when you put women in executive positions, inclusivity, diversity automatically becomes part of the organization. I think one of the big advantages for me growing up at NDTV and coming into my own as a management executive at NDTV has been the support of my male colleagues. I'm sometimes invited to speak about the same topic at forums on International Women's Day. And my constant grouse is, why are there no men on these panels? We may have a man as the moderator, but the other speakers are usually women. I don't think this is a conversation, whether it is about diversity or inclusivity or gender parity, that can be held in segregation. Secondly, as a woman, I don't want to talk at men. I would like to talk with them. And so when I was being promoted, or even now in the daily decisions that I implement, which often have to be quite tough because of the ecosystem that we're operating in, the biggest proponents sometimes of support are my male colleagues. And I find that that's made a huge difference. And again, I think that's almost like in the water at NDTV because it has been a part of our legacy. When we look at a wider description of diversity, I think one of the things that we have always been very committed to is upskilling. So we pick up people from all sorts of backgrounds. People who began as drivers with us are now camera people. People who were initially writers or PNs are now editors. And there has always been a mandate for how can we upskill people within our premises so that there genuinely is a diversity of background across the organization. Again, I would say in the late 80s is when we began running a creche, which was unheard of at the time. And it happened partly because we had so many women employees, but also because we wanted to have more women come on our roles. And that created a wonderful atmosphere where women felt that they didn't really have to choose between being a mother and being a career person. As an organization, we certainly didn't want them to have to choose. And I think these are some examples of the way that we have demonstrated and benefited, actually. We haven't just done it because it's now what is called an ESG mandate or whatever. We did it because we genuinely saw so much benefit. We reaped such rich dividends from having women in these positions. Deepika spoke about women deciding budgets, and my own experience as an executive is that women are far sharper at coming in under budget than men. And so the more that we include women and respect their decisions and give them a voice, the likelier we are to have smarter businesses, more profitable businesses. Deepika also referred to the fact that there is a mandate to now have women on boards, and I think that was a very welcome step. I do find that even in companies that are led by women or that have very women-friendly policies, boards perhaps need a little bit more tutoring still. I do think that boards treat male CEOs and women CEOs quite differently. And perhaps that is because directors tend to be of a certain school of thought and generation. And I'd love to see that changing somewhat faster now than it has so far.
It was wonderful to have your thoughts. Samit sir, can we move on to you next? You're the only male panelist here. Moderators are allowed, but you're the only.
I know we have the majority of women here. So.
No, but as Suparna put it, that generally she wouldn't have any male panelist, but here we at least have you here.
Yeah.
So from a ESG point of view, and by ESG I mean environment, social, and governance point of view, we generally lay a lot of emphasis on environment and social, but sort of on the governance part of it, tend to leave out diversity. When we have to review diversity from an ESG point of view, what would your views be on that?
Okay. So it's a very important thing actually, because everywhere we are now looking at ESG, and ESG has really a lot of noise nowadays, and everyone is looking to get their ESG score better. But I think from me, if you're really talking about diversity and inclusion, so it comes two places at ESG. Social, of course. When we're talking about environment, social, and governance, social, of course, talks about a lot on the how do you treat your employees, what kind of a diversity you have in your employees. And diversity doesn't only mean the woman. I will definitely say diversity has all other things included in that. And more than diversity, we really have to see, is there an inclusion in the organization? Or that's very important, because people are feeling included or not. There are people from the different background, from the different diverse candidate, but are they actually feeling included in the organization or not? Do we do that kind of a some impact assessment, or some kind of a assessment for that? But I think that's very important. And in the ESG, since you asked me, ESG, the social as well as governance both talks about diversity, because when you are saying social, that means you definitely have to take care of all your employees, diverse candidates and all pool of diverse candidate. But in social, there is something, in the governance, there is something. Number one, you have to report it. So when you report it, then only people get to know that what exactly. I think diversity was always there, like in NDTV. Suparna is saying that it has always been there even before ESG. So what we need to do now is that after ESG, it's very important for us to at least report it, so that people should know it, the world should know it, that this is what is happening. The other thing is that in the governance, now the board, I'm seeing invariably all the boards have women director nowadays. And it's very, it's very important actually. ESG, or the diversity is actually a journey. And I would say that we have actually moving very fast in that. We have come across a lot, as the word is. And I think in the governance perspective, SEBI has also mandated that we should have a woman director on the board. But before that, also we have seen that wherever the woman director on the board, there is a different perspective brought from by the women. They have different kind of a deliberation. They talk on diversity, they talk on social elements, they talk on environmental when the women are on the board. So always there is a different perspective when you have people from the different background, or different for example, women on the board. So I think ESG, yes, ESG score is very important nowadays. And let me just tell you, the investors and the institutional people are very, very smart. They look at your score, even if you don't get yourself rated or something, because there's no regulatory rating there. But still, they take out your data from the public domain, and then they start rating you. And when they start rating you, definitely they see a lot of things, including your diversity policy, including your inclusion policy, equity policy, your workplace safety, and also everything on the basis of everything you get rated. And once your ESG score is high, definitely you are going to get a lot of advantages. One is that you get a lot of cheap funding, frankly. That is one very important aspect. The other is then, you are treated as one of those organizations which take this diversity or the other things as an important aspect. And let me tell you, when you say that this is a part of your ESG or your priorities, that means what? That the tone has set at the top level, and that's very, very important. As she said, the Radhika, started everything and all. But unless and until your board level or your diversity committee level, this tone has set, and then they say, yes, this is what is to be done in our organization, then only the seriousness comes. Otherwise, you know, of course, it's a job of a CHRO, but CHRO has to make sure that it has a blessing from the board, and then it cascaded to that middle level management. The board has to really regularly, repeatedly, make a focus or emphasis on that. And I tell you, our organization, whenever we have a business review from the business people, there is always a slide on ESG and diversity related slide, and that's very important. We have seen in the last 2 years, and that's something which really put them in a position that they have to work on that actually. So I think Yeah, it's very, very important. Yesterday I was looking at an advertisement of NHAI. It says we not only build roads, we build the country, we build the nation. So that's where I'm saying that, when we talk about diversity, we're talking about inclusion in the organization. The entire organization should feel that I'm included. So I think ESG, yes, it plays a very important role to promote diversity, and more the people are going towards increasing their score in ESG. I think yeah, definitely it's going to be a bigger step by Indian as well.
So from Samit sir, we now go on to Roop. Roop, we would first want to hear what are your views on diversity and inclusiveness? And along with that, what are the steps that your organization, that is Rolls-Royce, has taken, or any difficulties that you may have faced in the organization or elsewhere to inculcate or maybe promote diversity?
Thank you very much, and I'm very delighted to be on this panel. A very good afternoon to everyone. Well, as far as diversity and inclusion is concerned, I think diversity is a much broader term than just being restricted to a gender diversity. So diversity, by diversity we mean uniqueness, and how do we celebrate uniqueness? Each individual is unique. We as a country are very diverse, so we are from different regions, there are different regional languages, and the backgrounds that we come from, that constitutes our personality. So how do we celebrate each distinct personalities? That to me is diversity. Of course, gender diversity is very close to my heart, and as I always maintain that yes, we have traveled a lot of distance, but we've not reached the destination. So it's not only the organizations which I feel need to change. They are changing, they have traveled quite a lot of distance, but as a society we need to change, and a lot of changes are coming through as responsible companies. The advertisements that they are taking out, they are coming up with responsible advertisements where they just don't show women as, behind a washing machine or a washer or so. So, I mean, we are evolving as a society, so societal changes are coming through, but not as rapid as they need to be. As far as organizations are concerned, within the organization that I represent, they promote diversity and inclusion with a lot of commitment, and there are mandatory trainings. Trainings are not just theoretical, that online training also. They are mandatory face-to-face leadership level trainings, and then mid-management level trainings, so that adequate sensitization is brought through. The case laws are the live case laws, which may have gone to some investigation committee or so, are discussed with people in a manner of storytelling, so that the grasp is more, people are more sensitized. And there's a strict policy of diversity and inclusion within the organization. As far as your own personal experiences are concerned, I think none of us can say that we've not felt excluded at any point of our lives. I think even in school days, we may have felt excluded. Okay, you're too short, you can't be in the basketball team also. So these are simple examples, and I think if a person is excluded, this can be very detrimental to a person's mental health, because there's some kind of psychological impact that it triggers. So it can be like as small as, okay, within the team, a team has gone for a lunch or dinner, but has left a person behind. Like, we all have grown up, but we at certain point of time we do tend to feel bad about it. So to me, inclusivity is right from, it has to start from a micro level and it has to extend to a macro level. So just by having broad policies within an organization, and which are theoretical, is one thing, that is laying down of a framework, but I think the implementation has to be very effective. And where it comes from is, as Deepika mentioned, it has to be a tone from the top, and not only a communication tone from the top, but a genuine commitment from the top.
Thank you so much, Roop, for your
And may I
views.
also add something, since you're talking about your organization, what your organizations are doing, I was surprised and pleasantly surprised when I was talking to our CHRO in terms of what do we do in terms of diversity and all kind of a things. So he told me two, three very simple things. He says, every recruitment consultant we hire, we have already given them a mandate. When we have a diverse candidate, you will get more commission on that. If you are giving 1 month salary, we'll give 1.5 month salary kind of a thing. So that's a mandate to recruitment consultant. Plus, we have a referral policy. If you refer somebody, you get some, amounts or something. If one staff member refer to another staff member, there also we have increased. If you refer a diverse candidate, the remuneration is increased. So I think these are very small, small steps which I was pleasantly surprised to know that organization is doing and they're taking care of it. So I just wanted to add that point also.
That's a very valid point, Samit sir. Uh, Thank you so much, Roop, for your views. In fact, I'm a little moved by your views because what I also actually feel is that the word diversity has to be seen from more of a society point of view, then it trickles down to an organizational point of view. We would never talk about inequality, or we would never have the term equality in our dictionary if there was no inequality. Why do we talk about diversity? We talk about diversity because at some level there is lack of diversity. If there was no lack of diversity, I don't think there was a need for this panel to be here today. Now, this panel is here today because there is a lack of diversity, and that's why we are taking an initiative to address that need. There can be a regulatory regime, there can be a policy regime. Organizations can take steps to sort of do away with lack of diversity. But at some level, it needs to come from a society point of view, wherein we need to see everyone for whom they are and forget diversity as a term in totality. I know it's impossible. I know, I mean, it won't be possible, but yeah, we can always have that thought. Uh, and why I'm saying all of this is because uh, uh, I've been at LNL Partners, formerly known as Luthra and Luthra Law Offices, for the last 5 years. Uh, and I'm a partner here. I do take care of a team. I'm to a certain extent responsible for recruitments. And in doing so, at least the vision that has been inculcated upon us, and to a certain reason, I'm very thankful to Mr. Luthra for inculcating that vision, is that whenever we see a person, at least from the recruitment point of view, we look at it very simply from what the person brings to the table. We ideally don't see who is the person sitting behind the chair or behind the table in front of the chair, but what the person brings to the table. And right from promotions to what your remunerations are is all very merit based rather than what gender, what part of the society, or where a person comes from. uh, Equally important in today's time, especially, which is the post-pandemic time being, is is the well-being of a person. I think so. Because we are to a certain extent deliberating upon diversity, inclusiveness. We tend to forget that the moral of the story is to be happy, and that moral can only be achieved if there is employee well-being. No matter how diverse an institution is, if a diverse institution is not happy, then it doesn't do that well. I mean, the happiness quotient needs to be there, and and so the need of the hour, along with being diverse, inclusive, is also to look after the well-being of the employees of an organization. Uh, Before I move on, uh, if there are any questions that the audience may have, I mean, the panel would be more than
And
happy.
and I just want to add to your point again. You really said very right thing that this is something which, I mean, there's no regulation. We can't be regulating these things, right? So this is a concept which has to come from within, which has to come from society within. And that's where I say that it has to be in the DNA or the culture of the organization. Of course, by regulating it, you can do something. If people are, looking for ESG scoring, or people looking for other BRSR scoring, of course, you at least tend to do a lot of things because you have to score that, you have to include that in the report. But ultimately, it comes from the culture of the organization, and that's where it needs to be sorted out, that, at the top level, the culture of the organization talks about this or not. And the moment you say that this is something which we need to tick the box kind of a thing, it's a death of a concept, I'm telling you. Definitely, it has to be within the organization, and I fully agree with you. The culture or DNA of the organization really plays that, people are happy or not happy. That's very important. Sorry to bother you.
No. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your view. So I open the house for the public. If anyone has any questions, you can specifically ask the panelists, or you can ask me if anyone may have.
Hello. So, sir, you talked about merit and how your law firm doesn't really consider where a person comes from. But, sir, I wanted to ask what exactly merit entails as per you, as per your personal definition of merit, and what's the interplay between social inequality and merit? What bearing does social inequality has on merit, and how may it affect merit of a person, and whether it can cause some sort of injustice, if I can put it like that, when it comes to securing a job in a good firm?
When we talk about merit-based, every competitive exam that any person goes through always feels that there may be some injustice to him. Because, a lot of times you prepare in a certain manner, and what you come across is not what you've prepared for. So on that particular day, it's not that you don't know it, but you've not exactly prepared for it. Ideally, when I say merit based, it is we have a qualitative questionnaire, and we just do a qualitative marking on that, which is pretty number based. So it is very transparent in that manner. But it's just like a competitive exam that you may get 20 questions which you've ideally not prepared on that particular date. So in that regard, there may be some injustice which people feel, but that injustice is not based on non-inclusiveness or diversity, because the questionnaire is same. Okay, any person who comes, the questionnaire is same. I mean, the questionnaire differs from the number of years that you have in experience. So it may be the same questionnaire for 2 years, and a different questionnaire from 2 to 4 years, from 4 to 6 years, but the questionnaire is same. So at some time, the person filling the questionnaire may feel shortchanged, but the rules of the game are fixed, and the rules of the game don't change. So that is why I mean, in my view, it's inclusive, because the rules of the game are the same and they don't differ for anyone.
And just to add to this, I think at some point of time during interviews, all of us get rejected or denied also. That doesn't mean that anyone lacks merit. It just means that maybe the fitment is not there either for the role or the company, or vice versa. So sometimes we get regretted, sometimes we regret. So it's not that there's any lack of merit. So
I just wanted to clarify one thing. So you said that the questionnaire is fixed and it's equal for everyone. It depends on the experience that person has. But what I was inferring to was that each and every person comes from a different background, and when it's equal and not equitable, then is that unfair for them? That's what I actually meant. If that makes sense.
No, so,
So please.
no, I think, you really can't ignore merit, frankly. I'm saying that. So the point here is that merit is something which will always remain on the top. But the point here is, if you have two competitive candidates, both are equally good, merits, then of course, diversity funda is there, you have to really see that something, as a culture of my organization, we need to have a pool of diverse people and all. But you really can't ignore merit. If there is a merit, yes, there is indeed merit, and then that is to be preferred, frankly.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
And hello. So merit anyway never gets ignored. For example, if I'm the hiring manager and the recruiter has given me a pool of candidates, and let's say 50% are diverse and 50% are non-diverse, I have to deliver, right? So I obviously will go for the merit, because end of the day it's my performance also. If my team is not performing, I'm not performing. So merit is always at the top.
Thank you, ma'am.
Would there be any other questions? Anyone? So with that, in case we are done, I would want to extend a vote of thanks to all the panelists. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Roop, ma'am. Thank you so
Nakul.
much.
Thank you very much.